What is up, YouTube? I quickly want to just make a balance adjustment preview video covering how it's going to impact Guild War. I know a lot of other YouTubers have already covered how it impacts RTA and Arena and other things in general, and the PvE for Clarissa and stuff like that. But I think there's a unique kind of perspective and from Guild War, from mainly more so of an offensive perspective in terms of how the meta might change with some of these changes. And full disclaimer, it doesn't really change a lot, but there's definitely a few things I do want to kind of get into, and we're not gonna do any much editing, we're just gonna go straight into it. All right, so first things first, as you guys already know, we're gonna be seeing LQC receiving a buff, basically getting extinction on her S3, and her imprint concentration is going to be crit chance. Now, currently she is already a great offensive unit to bring against Urban Shadow Shoe due to Snow Crystal existing. For those of you that don't know what Snow Crystal does, on screen you'll see that the artifact basically gives you critical hit chance resistance, right? And when that does happen, it gives a CR push to the shoe, which is, a lot of players do use as cheese to avoid being, strays, because oftentimes Urban Shadow Shoe will have the highest HP on a Proof of Valor build. So strays is obviously a very, favorable option that some players like to use, more so in kind of the top 30 to maybe 500 range. But LQC at the higher levels, many players, and not many, but some do opt to use LQC because she has, 100% crit chance. Let's say you put her at 100% crit. Elemental Advantage gives you an automatic extra 15% chance. So if that shoe is on Snow Crystal, you basically have a 5% chance of missing on that shoe, which are honestly pretty good odds when you get to the highest ranks, right? And one thing that's really great about this extinction being added to her kit is that she no longer demands Sinful Angelica when bringing her into Abyssal Euphine defenses, which is huge, right? That unit slot can be freed up, so defenses with Luluca and Euphine essentially are going to become non-existent because, Sinful Angelica is no longer a requirement, right? It's very rare that someone would bring, LQC with Briar because the synergy is not really that good. You can't really get an attack buff, but this is just amazing. And obviously, just getting a crit chance self imprint makes skewing her, way easier, obviously. But the main thing is, not having to bring Sinful Angelica with her really frees up that offensive capability that LQC already kind of had. But this is just gonna, make it tenfold, basically. Now, TML is, the buffs are honestly a bit lackluster in my opinion, but this unit continues to be a non-factor in Guild War, right? She doesn't really do enough damage by herself to extinct units, because most units that do have Holy Sack or some type of revive is going to be kind of tanky. Something like a Euphine or Candy or Ilanef, stuff like that. Sometimes very hard to kill them, even if you have really high gear score on that TML. And having her skill 2 ability just have a non-attack skill which can trigger things like Secret Art Storm Sword, Soul Consellation. It's just very bad in that sense, because not in Guild War you're fighting against a controlled team, a controlled environment, but then now you're putting yourself in a position where you're also in a controlled environment where you're demanding yourself to S2 to put that attack buff for the rest of the team. And if you don't know what artifacts that enemy is running, that can really be the difference in whether you win or lose, and it's just not a safe option. From a follow-up perspective, if you already have all the info about a certain defense, obviously you can use it, right? If it's like an 8k HP Euphine with 4k 300 crit damage as an example, then of course, by all means, be my guest, right? But usually that's not really going to be the case, right? But overall, this unit, the buffs to top Model Luluca will not impact Guild War in any way whatsoever, unfortunately. Next unit on the board here is going to be ML Roana, or some people want to call Requiem Roana. She is already a great Guild War offense unit, and honestly this change makes her even better because with the release of ML Ludwig, right, Zeo, Ludwig, ML Roana have been very prominent in the higher ranks of Guild War from a Guild War offense perspective, and it's for one very simple reason, right? You can drop Ludwig's speed and make him have way more damage for DPS checks against many defenses because you no longer have to have him at that 250, 260, 270 range, right? You can have him at 220, 210, 230, and just stack a ton of damage on him, put him on an attack boot, no problem, because Zeo Soulburn S3 into a Roana Soulburn S1 oftentimes means that you're just going to be able to really just pull giga value on that Ludwig Soulburn, attack scaling damage in S3 and just wipe the team, right? But overall, her buff of S2 isn't really affecting much because nobody really looks at a Guild War defense and sees Abyssal Euphine and Politis, if they do have Politis, and goes like, I'm gonna Zeo Ludwig that, right? No one does that, right? So her S2 buff really changes nothing. This is more so for Arena and RTA. And the strip on her S3 is also more of an RT and Arena buff. I really wish I could say that's a kind of a Guild War buff, but you can't really plan an attack based on stripping a defense's immunity or buffs with not just even Model Roana's S3, her new S3, but just any unit in general. That's why units like, for example, let's just say Basar or Falconer Kluri that's getting buffed soon, you have to bring a book with them, because if you get 15%ed, you're probably going to lose, right? You're not going to plan a Guild War attack when 15% exists, right? Because it's just unrealistic, right? So this S3 really doesn't change Guild War, and it doesn't change her usage at all in Guild War offense. This impact is really just going to be, the damage increase, right? Her damage increase, we will have to see the multipliers and test the new comps to see, if there's any new, strat that we can run with to pair her with any different units. But as of right now, we won't really be able to have a more definitive opinion because there's no multipliers to go based off of. But so far, if you don't know already, Zeo, Ludwig, and Roana, that's the bread and butter. If you want to run that 3 times in your Guild War attacks, I promise you, you're not really going to lose for the most part. Next unit we're looking at is Covenant Clarissa 4-star. Not even going to talk about her, just PvE changes, no point, right? Falconer Kluri. Now this one's a bit interesting, right? As many of you know, I'm the only person to ever really lose to a Falconer Kluri defense in 2023. So there's that. Let's just get that out of the way, okay? I can see some players using Falconer Kluri as like a cheese defense in the first week or two of Guild Wars, but like that's really about it, right? Once people kind of figure out like what the niche is, you're not really going to see much play. You're not really going to be taking units to have focus on Guild War defense anyways. Like sure, you could bring into Urban Shadow Shoe, or you can bring it into Candy or Abyssal Euphine. Guess what? If Abyssal Euphine or Navy Captain Landy counters, they're just going to get that fighting spirit back, and you're probably not going to want to dump an S1 with Falconer Kluri into them anyways. But you can trigger counter, Elbrus, all that stuff. And for Urban Shadow Shoe, I mean, she just has so much tempo, right? She can be on a 290 build. The other units are usually paired with is like something like Luluca. So she has a lot of support usually in defense. So you're not really going to be running a resource reduction for a Guild War perspective, right? Think this is more so just to give her like a little bit of a slight buff, change her up a little bit, and just let her be a bit different. But again, it feels more like an RTA buff to me, right? Because honestly, in Guild War offense, if you're gonna non-Soulburn S3 with Falconer Kluri S3, you've already lost. Let's just say that, okay? Anyhow, moving over to Victorious Flag, this change is actually really nice for players who use units like Arya but lack limited artifacts like Fairy Tale for Nightmare, or maybe even her own artifact like Scroll of Shadows, right? And I think this is a really nice change because this is more catered to kind of the early mid-game players where maybe they don't have that many artifacts due to maybe missing certain side stories or not having a Guilty Gear collab, for example, or maybe they had to prioritize getting like SSB from the most recent custom banner, or Guiding Light or whatever, right? So I think this is a very nice change. On the top of my head, are just like Arya, right? Other units that some people have kind of mentioned, like talking to me on Discord about, is Arunka and Huayang. Well, these units are still going to rely heavily on Spirit Purification just because the flat attack that it gives from the artifact itself is just way too valuable. So it's just not possible, right? Is there a chance you could use Victorious Flag on defense for some cheeses? Probably. But as of right now, I don't think there's really an immediate change where any specific RGB units are really going to be able to benefit. But from a high-end Guild War perspective, this artifact will not really impact the meta whatsoever, just given the fact that it doesn't really replace any artifacts that we already use now or have. That's what we would say. For Rage, it doesn't really change much, right? I would like to call this a Teiyu buff, but this changes nothing in Guild War, unfortunately. And honestly, all these Constellation changes and Awakening changes, it's cool and all. It does not really impact Guild War whatsoever, one bit, just because this just means you're going to be able to gear units like Ludwig easier, right? Maybe green Ludwig if there's a blue shoe on defense. Units like Aelika, if you're going to run them into Karina or Destina or whatever, it'll make gearing them a little bit easier, which is, fine and all, but this is more so catered towards a RTA update. Same with TML, same with Vivian, same with Carrot, all these units. It doesn't really change much for Guild War. However, I will say there is one mage that's getting a 5 speed bump, which is Auxiliary Lots. And not too long ago, we were actually kind of worried that he would be getting nerfed because Spear's Breath was kind of on the chopping block, right? But auxiliary lots receiving a 5 speed increase is actually pretty good in Guild War offense, because this actually allows people that are doing follow-up attacks when you have scout information. For example, if you have the speeds and you can just go A-lots, Luces, or A-lots, plus another unit, and you just kind of delete them off the board. He works great, right? And as you guys can see in front of you, there's a 308 speed auxiliary lots thumbnail that I hadn't used before, and actually now that means with my new speed upgrades, and I can probably get a less actually like 315, or maybe not exactly, but yeah, about 315. So honestly, the change is very good, but I'll stop yapping there. Overall, I would say the change in the balance adjustment that they've implemented this time is quite good, because obviously I'm playing a lot of RTA, but from a Guild Wars perspective, we can see and hope or expect that there isn't really going to be that much change in the meta. Really, we're just going to see a spike in usage of LQC if you ever look at the Fribbles tracker, or just in general in your Guild War attacks, right? But I won't yap too much. I want to keep this video nice and short and kind of straight to the point. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this kind of balance adjustment and coverage, just because I haven't seen really anyone with good takes regarding Guild War, and I don't really expect anyone to have them except for me or maybe Meowmix or something like that. But yeah, as always, if you guys did enjoy this, please drop a like and comments. It's getting very late, so I'm going to catch some sleep, as you can see how tired I am. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time, maybe tomorrow, or catch my stream. So see you there. Bye.